So hopefully now you have an understanding of sound, how it works. It's a longitudinal wave of vibrating air particles set into motion because something else has vibrated. And you know about pitch and volume and timbre, the quality of sound, things like that. I now want to talk to you about how sounds get heard, how they get received and perceived by living things like you and me. How is it that you are hearing me right now? I'm not talking about your computer and Wi-Fi and the information transfer, all that stuff. I'm just saying that once your speaker vibrates to create the sound wave in the air, how does that sound wave get received by your ear and then by your brain? How is it that when I say the word sound, I make the sounds sound? How is it that those sound waves get picked up by your ear, then put into your brain, and somehow interpreted by your brain to make a word that means something, or at least I hope it means something to you now, the word sound? If you've been listening, it should mean a lot. How is that possible? How do all these things work together? How has your body evolved to pick up sound waves? That's what I'm going to discuss now, the physiology of hearing. That word physiology just means the study of how a body system works, the study of the function of the human body. So we're going to study the physiology of hearing. Before we get into this, I do need to tell you uh, how any sensation basically works in the human body. There's always going to be three steps: sensation, transduction, and perception. So keep these steps in mind as we have our discussion. We're going to talk in depth about the first two in terms of hearing. The last one, to be honest, it's still quite a bit of a scientific mystery, so I'm not going to be talking about it a whole lot. But sensation is the process by which sensory stimuli, that could be light, it could be sound, it could be touch, it could be a smell, how those things get received by the specific sensory parts of the body. So sensation, if we study that in the context of sound, that would have to do with how sound waves get picked up by your ear, right? So that's sensation. The big problem, though, with sensation is that every message that your body receives has got to go to your brain to get processed, or to your nervous system to get processed. But your nervous system, so to speak, speaks a different language. It speaks the language of electricity, and sound is not electricity. Light for vision is not electricity. Um, Smell is not an electrical signal. So all of these signals, all of these sensations, the message that has been received has got to get translated into an electrical language. Your nervous system, your nerve cells, your brain, they work via electrical signals. So we have got to take the message, take the sound that has been sensed, and we have got to transduce it, which means that your body has got to convert that signal into an electrical signal so it can be sent to the brain. Make sense? And then the final step is perception. This is the process by which your brain actually makes sense of, interprets the received message. You hear the word sound spoken by me. Your ear has received that sensory stimulus, transduced it into an electrical stimulus, which has gone to your brain, and your brain is somehow able to translate that, make sense of it. What does the word sound mean? What do I know about sound? What do I think about sound? What have I learned about sound? That's perception, when your brain makes sense of the message. So sensation, transduction, perception, we're going to talk about the first two. Here's a quick little chart of that. There are all sorts of stimuli here. We're hearing the coffee drip. We're smelling the aroma. We're seeing it. Those would be sensory stimuli, and they're received by sensory receptors. That would be the process of sensation. How is the sense actually received by the body, by the eyes, ears, nose, etc.? And then that message has got to get transduced into electrical nerve signals and then sent to the brain, where the brain will perceive it, where perception happens. So here's the ear. I hope it's not a surprise to most of you that the ear is the organ of hearing. It's the sense organ. So we need to talk about how a sound wave, how a sound stimulus will get sensed? How will it get picked up by this sense organ? So remember what a sound wave is. It's composed of vibrating air particles. Basically, all we're trying to do in order to sense those vibrations is take those vibrations and turn them into other types of vibrations. So we have vibrating air particles, and those are going to get captured, kind of funneled by the fleshy part of your ear, which is known as the pinna. You'll notice, by the way, that your ear is divided into three main parts: the outer ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear. I'm not really worried that you know those parts. So, the pinna is the fleshy outer part of the ear that helps to funnel the vibrations, the sound waves, in through this little tunnel, which is known as the ear canal. And then those vibrations are going to experience their first sort of transfer. These vibrations, remember the air particles are vibrating, that's a sound wave, are going to get transferred to this little membrane right here, which is known as the tympanic membrane. You might know it as the eardrum. So that's what this guy is right here. And the air particles are basically going to collide into it with a specific frequency, with a specific amplitude. Remember information transfer, right? There's information in the sound wave. There's a certain pitch, there's a certain loudness, a certain timbre, etc., etc. So all that has got to get transferred without getting lost. It's just due to the vibration. It's just due to the transfer of vibrations, right? These air particles are vibrating in a specific pattern that's going to collide with the tympanic membrane, with the eardrum, cause it to vibrate now with the exact same pattern. So it's now vibrating with the exact same pattern. It's moving back and forth with a specific frequency. It's moving back and forth with a specific amplitude. So all that information that was stored, so to speak, in the sound wave is now in the tympanic membrane. The tympanic membrane is then going to vibrate these three bones right here. These are the tiniest bones in the human body, and they're known as the ossicles. And they're not going to start to vibrate. So the tympanic membrane has the information. It's vibrating. It's going to pass it on to the ossicles, and the ossicles are going to start vibrating now as well with the same pitch, the same frequency, the same amplitude, the same vibrational pattern that the original sound wave did. So they're going to start vibrating. Um, these ossicles are actually quite interesting. It is thought that they have evolved, they've adapted over millions of years from what were once part of the jawbones of our ancient reptilian ancestors. Yes, your ancestors were fish and reptiles and all that good stuff due to evolution. And it's thought that these three little bones have evolved and adapted from parts of the jawbones of those ancient ancestors. I think it's pretty interesting. So the ossicles are now vibrating, and then this last ossicle right here, which is known as the stapes, there's three of them. They each have names: the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. I'm not going to have you know that. The stapes, you see that it has this kind of funky shape, horseshoe shape with the little almost foot on it. And that foot is going to very gently vibrate with the exact same pattern that the sound wave did. It's going to vibrate and push against this weird looking organ. This organ is known as the cochlea, and it's an incredibly complicated, incredibly complex organ. I'm not going to get into all the finer details about how it works, but basically you need to know that the cochlea is full of fluid. And so as this stapes bone vibrates, its little foot pushes on the cochlea. The cochlea is made of a flexible membrane, and that vibrational pushing is going to cause the fluid within the cochlea to swish back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And so now finally we have vibrating fluid. So we started with vibrating air particles. Those get trapped up in the ear canal. They cause the tympanic membrane to vibrate with the same pattern. The tympanic membrane causes the ossicles to vibrate with the same pattern. And the stapes bone, the last one, causes the fluid in the cochlea to vibrate with the exact same pattern. So we have sensed the stimulus. We have sensed the sound. Remember, there are three parts to receiving any sort of information from the outside world: sensation. What was the second part? Transduction. And then finally, the last part was known as perception, right? So do you remember the problem? Even if we sense the stimulus from the outside world, the information from the outside world, even if we were to capture it perfectly, which we have just done, we have kind of transferred the vibrating air particles, the sound wave, into vibrating fluid in the cochlea. So we have received the information, we've sensed it. But what's the problem? The problem is that the brain only speaks the language of electrical signals. So we have to convert that information into an electrical signal, into an electrical impulse. And that's the process of transduction. And let me teach you about how transduction works. So remember where we left off with sensation. We have vibrating fluid in the cochlea. Well, if we were to cut the cochlea open and zoom in, we would see these tiny, tiny, tiny little cells that are sticking up like this, that are stuck to what's known as the basement membrane of the cochlea. And those cells in the cochlea are known as hair cells. And it is the hair cells that are responsible for transduction, for transducing the vibrational signal and turning it into an electrical signal, because those hair cells are actually nervous system cells. They are attached to what is known as the auditory nerve. That's this right here. The hair cells are attached to the auditory nerve. Now remember, the hair cells are in the cochlea. What's the cochlea filled with? Fluid. So we have fluid that is basically vibrating, swishing back and forth over the hair cells. And what do you think the hair cells are going to do? Yeah, they're going to be vibrating back and forth. So these hair cells are moving, they're vibrating with the exact same vibrational pattern that the sound wave came in with. So the sound wave vibrates the tympanic membrane, which vibrates the ossicles. The stapes vibrates the fluid inside the cochlea. The fluid inside the cochlea is going to cause the hair cells to vibrate. And those vibrations will get transduced, will get converted into electrical impulses, electrical signals.